And Board of Selectmen, Richard Shea, Nicholas Bonapane. I'm sorry, Andrew Morse. And of course, I'm having Brock Mitchell, myself, Paul LaRochelle, and the town administrator, Ryan Heath. We are going to also at some point have Tara Bamford, our consultant, joining us. She'll probably fall in at some point. So this evening we'll start with the conversation on the short-term rentals. This was approved on the town elections to move forward. And we have questions regarding the short-term rentals from people that we have that the town planner supplied to us. And if we'd like to go over that first, or if someone has questions to begin with, or we can go through this, if everybody would like to go through the questionnaire that we have, and we can start with that, or we can have discussion on the short-term rental permit. I'm open for a suggestion on that.
I did.
Yep. So if you guys would like to start off with either or.
Is that the question for us? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I mean, if you'd like to start off, I mean, we have the questionnaires. Do you want to go through the questionnaire first, or would you like to discuss the application for short-term rental permit first?
I think maybe going over the questions first, John.
I think that would,
I think that's a good
I think
place
that
to
would, you
start.
want to go through them, we can go through them one at a time. And
Sure.
would you want me to read them, or would you like to read them?
You can go ahead and read them.
Okay. Okay, one of the first questions that's on here is what, if any, types of documentation should be provided if a property owner has an STR off a private or class 6 road prior to the town requiring property owners record of waiver or liability, if there is one in place. Would property owners be required to inform? So there's another question there, so we can start with the first question.
Did you guys want me to just hop in if I have something to contribute, or?
Yes,
Yes, please, Tara.
we didn't know you were here, Tara, sorry.
I am now. I was waiting for it to the Zoom to start for a couple of minutes. So I saw that one and on the draft form, I think that would be something the code enforcement person would document rather than the landowner. Like that's town records, whether it's a class 5 road or private, and whether it's been approved by the planning board on a recorded plat.
Okay.
So
So
can
I
I
think
chime in on that?
Yes,
That's
I'd
the
like to
reason.
check.
So the reason why I wrote that on there is just, so it's actually in sort of the second half
Mhm.
of that question is, if someone's, renting out that property, would it be beneficial for them to know that there's a potential, depending on how well maintained the road is, that emergency services may or may not be able to access the property.
I think it's
So,
important.
and whether that becomes, I mean, I know that the property owners, sign that waiver.
Mhm.
So the town isn't liable, but I don't know, should
I
renters?
think that's a good point, and that's, as you know, I didn't want to see them allowed on class 6 roads for that reason. So I think that's a good point, but I think it's a different question than the documentation. I think that's a checkbox for the code enforcement person. But I think that's a good requirement. Along with the noise ordinance and what to do with trash and all that.
Definitely.
And so I'm going through this. I went through this this afternoon, the material that you had sent me most of what you just sent me, Jessica, earlier in, I'm going through this assuming that the select board would be adopting this under 4111C as an added layer on the zoning. Is that correct?
Is there a way that we can turn up the volume on that?
Yeah,
Is there any way it's hard to hear you, Tara?
Can we get her on to this projector over here? Because then we can use that.
It was set up.
Okay.
And so we're
It's-
trying to get a hold of Josh now because I don't know.
We're
why
working on trying to get your volume up because you're hard to hear.
Yeah, I remember with you, I had to use an external mic. Not right here anymore.
It's up all the way.
volume on the computer up all over.
Would that reach? With that screen? Brian? Would that screen reach all the way over here to put a mic next to it? Would that help? Or would that just get feedback?
Did you get it turned up?
Try again, Tara, please.
Should I just talk really, really loud? Does that work?
You got it.
All right.
We got it.
So my question was whether you would be adopting this as an added layer to the zoning under the 4111C business regulations. Because that's what will let you have some additional requirements in addition to what we put in section 365 in the zoning. And it's what will let you make the permit go with the owner rather than the property.
So yes. To
So
answer your
you'll-
question, yes, that's why we're here tonight to go over those,
Yeah.
to
Right.
create those regulations.
Yeah, I just want to
Oh,
make
that's
sure
gotcha.
we're on the same page. I reviewed
Yes.
it with that thought too. So yeah, I would have the first part of 1 be a checkbox for the code enforcement.
Okay,
But I think the second piece is a good idea to add to the, maybe even the person renting it should have to sign acknowledging that they see that. I hate those waivers. If anybody on the select board doesn't know, I'm pretty frank and I'll be honest with you. I hate those waivers because, they don't, the delivery person and the fireman aren't waiving their rights. So,
Mhm.
it's gonna be tough.
Okay, so what is the general consensus of the board?
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No,
Go ahead, Joe.
But this should be disclosed to the renters. They should know.
I think
that
it should be.
There's a possibility they can get to them.
Yeah.
So I think it's an important thing that it should be part of their disclosure. It should be part of their disclosure in their ad.
Should be part of the
Start as
disclosure with-
early as possible, that
with everything else.
wherever forum they're using to advertise their property.
No, it should be all part of that form that they fill out.
Or if there's a rental, however, I'm not intimate with the process, but how you would have, make a reservation or whatever, but it should be in there somewhere. There should be that disclaimer there that the road is not
Something that
maintained by the
says-
town.
subject to inefficient
That's correct.
emergency services.
That it's on a class 6
It's on a
road
class six
and
road,
it's class,
be able to get it.
and I think that's important that is disclosed in every contract.
Yeah, private road or town road is not maintained, however, but
Okay, yes.
Hey, we got through one.
Okay, number 2, if the requirement is to provide proof of an approved septic system or provide an approval for New Hampshire DES that a system can be constructed if a current system fails, what is required of the property owners out on the islands that have such provisions like composable toilets.
Don't they also have DES permits for what they have?
There, more and more and more are have septic systems. I mean, there are some out there that still use privies or whatever, but been a drastic increase on them that have DES approved septic systems installed.
Because on the camps up north, DES approves some holding tanks, so I know they approve some alternative systems.
Right, and they will generally approve up to a holding tank if that's all they could get, but there is I would say the majority of them have an approved system. A DES approved system. Yes, there are still, like I said, there are still some out there that have outhouses. Some people are using composting toilets. But
So basically, they just still do need to just provide that information and proof of
we need to know what they got.
what we need to know what they have. And that needs to be on the
That
question.
means if that's.
Yeah, but so I think Jessica's point is, in the ordinance, it's saying that they need a DES approved design in the event of failure. So I wonder if in this application form, it could say that a little bit different, like a DES approved alternative, DES approved system or alternative, something like that, that would cover the holding tank.
Right.
Like if it fails, what are they gonna do that DES would also approve as a backup plan, right? Does that make sense to you, Jessica?
Right, because the ordinance was very specific to septic systems.
Yes.
Can I just throw this out there for everybody to consider too, when you're talking about the septic systems, and I don't know if this discussion had happened or not, I'm sorry. Whether at the planning level and the zoning level, the discussion happened, but with the permit and the discussion of septic, is there gonna be a limitation on the number of people that a short-term rental is gonna be allowed to offer to? Because even if you got a 3-bedroom septic, but they're offering out a blanket rental, and we have, 10 people on an extended family showing up at an island property, that septic's gonna fail awful quick.
Yeah, she has covered that in the draft application form.
Yeah.
That is covered already.
Okay.
Yeah, she's covered that.
Mhm.
Does this requirement require when we say that approval from NPDES that a system can be constructed? Does that force the homeowner to actually get a designed
Yes.
system?
Yes.
Yes, it does.
Or the design done? Which is fairly expensive, as I recall, about $2,000 for a design, maybe more,
Designs,
even though they may never have to build it.
yeah, design costs with the state fee and everything is $1,800.
Yeah, I was just gonna say 2,000.
Yeah, that's all it is for a state for the design plans usually.
But you're talking about homes where you have no idea where it's going. Right? No DES permit.
Right. So that's the thing. A lot of these are older. They predate the regulations. We still have those. We have those in town, especially as long as they haven't failed, then it hasn't been an issue. But now we're up in the ante on these.
Yeah.
So now we're taking
That
a
means
place.
they're gonna have to bring their septics up to standard if they wanna, because they're.
Well, it's either that or they have, if they have a current septic system, they have proof of the system is working properly and correctly. If it's not, they have to have a approved design. So those are the two ways right there,
Right, they don't have to bring it up unless it fails.
unless it
Right.
fails,
Correct.
unless it fails.
They're gonna have lack of a better term, a pocket design.
Yeah, pocket.
Pocket design.
Yeah.
Okay, so what adding to that is a DES alternative, correct?
I mean, I could argue with a straight face that when we said in the zoning, current DES approved design, that on a grandfathered place with nowhere for a septic system, that design might be for a holding tank.
Yeah, an approved design is an approved design, whether it's for a full system or for a holding tank.
Right.
It still has the same type, it's the same approval.
Same approval design, but it's also an alternative. A holding
If-
tank
if
would
they're-
be,
If they're giving you an alternative, the holding tank, that's not an alternative, that's the last resort.
Yep.
That's right at the, yeah,
What?
right before.
Yeah,
the-
yeah,
what would be considered the alternative? I know we'd mentioned, having a approved DES septic system or holding tank or alternative.
But no, let's not get that, let's put
Leave
this
that
to
out.
rest right now.
Okay,
No, I think it could stick
Uh,
with the language we put in the zoning, the current DES approved design to be constructed in the event of system failure. And if that's somebody on an island who comes in with a plan for a holding tank, I think you accept it as long as DES is okay with it.
okay. Yeah,
I
somebody mentioned alternative. That's why I
Yeah,
asked.
but no,
Yeah,
we don't-
no, I did, but I wasn't,
Starting to
I
get
wasn't
into-
suggesting to write that in. I was suggesting that there could be alternative designs.
Okay. Okay, that's good. All right, we'll leave that right out of there. All right. All right, number 3. If the requirement is to provide a test with the absence of total coliform and E. coli by New Hampshire Environmental Laboratory Saturn Program, what is required of property owners out of the islands that may filter lake water or transport their own water to their dwellings?
right up front, let's just strike the term out on the islands. Because there are plenty of properties still on the mainland that use lake water, the seasonal property. So it we want to differentiate, in my opinion.
Okay,
But so of a property owner that may use lake water or transport their own. We can't, I don't know that we can force them to put in a well. I'm
No.
not sure where we stand with
No.
that. However, I feel that also should be part of their disclosure in their ad or whatever,
Yes.
right up front, that you had, the property uses lake water for bathing and flushing or, for sanitary process,
Not
but the
bottled.
water's
Right.
not fit to drink.
right. Bring bottled
You'll have
water.
to bring your own water,
Yeah.
or they provide, however it works out, but the property owner provides water.
Mhm.
I'm not saying mandated, but that could be their option, but the people that are renting this have to be aware that
Yes,
this is not the city or whatever, where you can figure you're safe, turn it on the tap.
yep. No, and they just need to disclose that they should be bringing bottled water if they need to, if they're drawing off the lake.
And using the spring on Alton Mountain Road may or may not be the
Mhm.
safest thing at this
Yeah.
point.
Any other questions or anything?
Not for that, no.
Not for that one. Okay. What will the town require for a permit fee?
So you'll want to make sure that it covers all of your staff time for dealing with the paperwork and the inspections.
Mm-hmm.
Tara, do you have any comparisons?
No, because no, the towns I tend to work with have a lot less staff than you, so it's a little bit different.
So you have no other towns that you can suggest a fee that they're charging?
I haven't looked at that.
We can check with Mike Laconia, go for it.
I think I'm pretty sure in Gorham, they said it would be the same $30 fee as all their, I think they charge the same for all their permits, and it's only about $30, which
Yeah.
doesn't cover much staff time.
Okay.
Maybe we should. I hadn't occurred to me to look at other towns that are doing it.
I had looked and I
Laconia,
couldn't see anything.
My advice would be $30. I mean, I get that permit fees for an electrical permit, for a plumbing permit or whatever, but where there's gonna be inspections and back and forth involved, to permit this, I think it needs, my personal opinion, it would be that it would fall between what a building permit would be
Mhm.
roughly on average and, in between that stage, because it's not hey, you applied, you filled out the application, here's the permit. It's gonna be, you filled out the application, you've on paper met the standards, but now you must schedule an inspection and go out and stuff like that.
So a flat $30 is what you're saying?
No,
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 no, it's too cheap.
that's too
That
cheap,
can't
right?
Cover the paperwork, yeah.
that's just for, that's usually what, around what we charge for electrical or plumbing, where they just come in, show their license and they get a permit. There's no personnel hours involved in that and those are inspections.
Well, realistically, for us to receive a permit, review it, and the building inspector to actually make a site visit, it probably involves at least 2 or 3 hours total of town staff work. I don't know if we have some guidance number of our cost per hour for that type of thing.
I was thinking anywhere between 100 and 150 was what I was thinking per permit
Hmm.
per year. Then what goes with that question, I think, is a permit good for 1 year or longer? In other words, should it,
Yeah, that's one of the next questions.
that's one of the next
That's
questions,
down.
and that kind of goes with this.
Hmm. I'd say it'd be at least $150.
That's what I was thinking is $100 to $150 per permit per year. And whether or not, then we'll handle that with the next question, whether it's 2 years,
Right, yeah.
2 years, and if you pay in advance for 2 years or pay 150 each year. But I'm thinking 100 and 150 is really where I was at, anywhere from 100, 150, but 150 is what I was thinking,
That was my
if that
low.
makes sense.
Yeah, that was my low one. I was thinking 150 to 200, depending on,
If a homeowner has an existing permit, are we foreseeing a reinspection every year,
Well, I was thinking a re-inspection every 2 years
2 years?
instead of every year. I would think skipping every other year for an inspection,
But the permits are every year.
but the permits are every year.
It's their annual.
And with that, that would give you the opportunity that if the permit was being renewed yearly, but the inspection was every 2 years, you could assess at that point in time whether we've received any complaints at that point. Because if we have a short-term, one of the issues with these regulations is going to be enforcement and making sure that, obviously the rules and regulations are being abided by. And if we have a problem property that constantly is causing the police department to come out or the code enforcement officer to come out for nuisance calls or noise ordinance violations, things like that, that's probably something the board would want to revisit at that point, or the code enforcement officer.
Right.
With that information.
So $150 for a
yeah,
permit.
If everybody's, I don't know if we need to take a vote on that now, or do we do that?
or how do you,
This is a work
Yeah, I think
work session.
my recommendation would be that you answer the questions that you want to answer, that we put the documentation together and then the final
Vote on
product
it.
Vote
goes
on
to
it.
the board
Yeah.
for review and vote. with all
how do
the
you,
information on it.
John, how do you feel about that? Is that reasonable, like time wise?
Yeah,
What it would cost?
I would definitely think
Is
so.
every 2 years sound good to you, and 150 per year?
And if there's any, if we receive a complaint or something.
Okay. Yeah, inspection.
And I think. Well, we'll get to that later.
There's a lot to.
Okay, so the general consensus then is 150 to start with that for the permit fee,
And inspecting every 2 years.
and inspect every 2 years. That's 2 lines down from there, but yes, okay. All right, the one we just skipped was number 5. What type of process would the BOS like to use to inform the public about STRs? What if there are any costs involved?
So that question really stems from how do we inform the public that there's a new permit process? That they, everybody needs to come in for a permit.
How does everybody get notified in town? Is what you're saying, that this is a new process that has to be.
Right. Right. And then, ads in the newspaper,
Yeah.
online, things like that,
All
or
those-
however.
The normal process. we
all
used
the
to-
normal
Yep.
processes that we would normally do to put out
Anything else?
notification.
Would you go so far as to include a notice in the property tax bill?
There's, that's a good idea, but I've heard that there are some restrictions on what can go out with the.
There
property
are,
tax bill.
yep, there are restrictions to
Okay.
adding non-related things
Yeah,
together.
non-tax
Yeah.
related
But I
things.
know a couple of my towns have sent letters to all of the residential property owners. Just, there's a, to be courteous and give a heads up.
Right, you
And-
can do like postcards at like bulk rate, it's a
Right.
lot cheaper,
Yeah. and
like
do
kind of
also
like we
put on
did
the
with, for the
website.
master plan.
Yeah.
Same thing.
We sent that out to everybody and
And that works. That works well.
The paper or something.
Add in the
Yeah.
paper, also the town website.
Yep.
And
You want to do social media?
Facebook,
accounts too?
yeah, social
yeah.
media.
Social
all-
media
all
again.
of the towns, Facebook pages.
Sign at the dump.
Things like that.
Sign it.
Seems like everybody goes there.
They're gonna end up there sooner or later.
Yeah.
Um,
Big billboard.
Okay. um, Web, paper. Okay. And we've already talked about, what would the duration be, for the permit to be valid? It'd be every year, but inspection every 2 years, is what we said.
I don't have any feel at all for how many applications we'd be processing in a given year. But, what kind of, this is not, you're not retiring because of this, are you?
No,
Okay.
It was quite a large number. Do you recall?
it is a
Yeah.
large, it's. People have been asking us, when is this gonna happen? It's, well, this is, it's like anything else, standing this up is gonna be, standing this up is gonna be time consuming.
Yeah, and there's no, even though there's no legal requirement to have a public hearing for 4111C regulations, the attorneys do recommend it. So you'll want to allow for that too.
Okay.
Okay. Public hearing.
Always err on the side of transparency, right?
Right.
And I'm sure we have to consider a grace period
And.
because of
Well,
the.
So I think that's in the
I know
next
it's on here.
question here.
I know we're
Um,
gonna get to it, so, all right, I
that's
won't jump the
number
gun.
7.
I won't jump the gun. Okay.
Well, I hope we hire somebody that can follow John around for a little bit, because you're throwing to the wall.
So I have a delivery truck here. If my dog starts barking, I'll just disappear for a couple of minutes. But I think you shared, did you share, you shared some other towns with the board too, or you just used them? I'm looking at the enforcement section of Gorham as an example with, they had the first offense be a written warning. So that would be that grace period that you mentioned.
Okay.
Mhm.
And then the second offense, they had $100 fine, but that's in relation to the $30 application fee. I would think you'd need to go have your fine be higher than your application fee.
Yes. Okay. Warning. So let's see.
Want to consider some of the penalties. We can look at some of the escalations of the other ordinances, like the noise ordinance violations. Some of the other stuff that the police department uses under misuse of power,
Mhm.
the dog the dog ordinance as well too, because that escalates
Mhm.
whether you're dealing with dogs at large
Right.
continually or vicious.
Who's gonna pay the fine? The homeowner or the person renting?
The property
The
owner.
Homeowner.
It would be the
I think
property.
it's.
And the last few sections of Gorham give you an idea about enforcement and revoking the permit. And I wrote those with their code enforcement officer and fire chief. So it was in line with other regulations there.
All right. Well, let me read number 7 into it. What are the penalties if the provisions indicate in the permit have been violated? What types of infractions would be considered a violation?
Fractions would be, to me, would be a common noise.
Right.
Parking,
Parking.
Anything that breaks the town ordinances, right?
Right. Yeah.
Anything.
that violates town ordinances and things that would normally get the police department involved
Mhm.
frequently.
And what I wrote down was basically, First offense is a warning. Is a warning, a written warning. Second offense, I was thinking in the lines of $300.
Oh,
And third offense, loss of permit privilege for 1 year.
And would those be 3 offenses for the same issue, like parking, for instance, or could be?
I think it
For
should be
any of
free
the
anything.
issues, for any of the issues, they pile up,
Any
And
three,
So,
any three,
combined or together, it doesn't matter.
right?
so just to clarify, to make sure when we're understanding this with the infractions.
Mhm.
So what you just talked about as far as the consequences would go against the homeowner
Yes,
who has the short-term rental.
right.
yes,
But it would be for violations. Some of those violations would be committed by the renters.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And any penalties for that ordinance violation would go to the renters directly.
Right.
Not the homeowner. So if they violated the noise ordinance and then went out, the police department went out and they fined them under the noise ordinance or charged them with the violation, they went.
That's on the renter.
That's on the renter.
Yeah.
So basically, just to make sure that
And
we're on the
that's,
same page with
but
that.
this also, go ahead.
What's up?
sorry,
Go ahead.
but that's kind of where I was going with this, because if you are renting your place and you got somebody, and I'm just playing devil's advocate here, but you got somebody that's on that lake that doesn't really care how much money they got, and you go in there and say, well, it's gonna be $300, and he's gonna be like, well, yeah, here's 10 grand, I'll be as loud as I want. We don't want that.
Well, this is where,
No, I'm just saying that this
but-
isn't a regular lake here.
No, I know.
this is where the manager, if you will, or the person that is on call that comes in. Because when the police come, they want to know who the owner is or who its agent is. That agent has to be within driving distance or within 15 to 30 minutes to respond to an incident.
Yeah.
And that should be on their actual sheet of rules and regulations of that this person gets notified immediately. Whether it's going to be a neighbor or the police notify that person, he responds within 15 to 30 minutes.
Farther down here, isn't that?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
But just to go back, just to answer Brock's question, and I know exactly where
I just-
you're coming from with that.
$1 million boats, they don't care about $300.
Yeah, but.
Don't care when they get
But
kicked
the
out.
issue is, the issue when we're talking about that though. We're talking about homeowners now with the violations. Now, if it's a renter who violates a
Right.
town ordinance and says, I'll just pay the fine, it becomes a criminal offense at that point.
Right.
They get hauled away. So, yeah, so then you would
But
lose
to
your.
put somebody's actions like that back on a renter, that's not even, that, and I get it, they're not here, and that maybe you shouldn't be renting a place.
Right.
But to put it back on a renter because you get a belligerent renter that doesn't care about.
Yeah, that's
anything but- You know what I mean? Now this poor renter's stuck with a $300, $400, $1,000 or whatever.
I mean, the
it is.
homeowner, Brock,
Yeah, the homeowner
Ultimately, the owner,
was with the responsibility of the renter.
but it's the responsibility of
what
the
you're saying.
homeowner to
That's
know who
right.
he's renting to.
see, the homeowner is responsible and in most short-term rental agents do a screening and they go through people and obviously,
Yeah, no, I-
there's people slip through, they go through and everything, but that's the responsibility of the owner of the property to adhere and make sure his renters know what the regulations are. And if they violate those regulations, they're not invited back. They don't come back. He doesn't get them back and he doesn't want to lose his privilege for the next year.
No, I got.
So it's gonna be, it's gonna be a few times it may happen, but that homeowner, in my opinion, would eventually say, you're not coming back because you've been a problem.
I just would hate to see the homeowner get punished for something that somebody's being, but I get what you're saying. You're gonna have to vet your
Mhm.
people that come in a little
Mhm.
better, that's all.
Exactly.
And the homeowner does have the advantage of at least having an initial warning at no cost.
Right,
Right.
right. The
So
first
he
time
kind
she
of
can
knows
say,
that
hey,
this person is on shaky ground with some renter.
Okay,
Just to throw this out, when we're talking about, violations of the rules and regulations, though, is there going to be some sort of, this is just something thrown out to think of, a mechanism that if you do have a problem client who's there for a week or more at the lake, where the police department's constantly being called by the neighbors or things like that for parties and everybody. Trust me, I've been there on the other side of, while I was still at the police department. Is there going to be a mechanism that the town has the ability to cut their rental short? Or force the homeowner to cut the rental short or take the permit away?
Well, if they
I mean,
violate,
that would
the-
be a very extreme situation. I don't anticipate it happening.
if they commit 3 separate infractions, if you call it, throughout that 1 week that they're there, I mean, the homeowner will be notified over the first one, the second one, and the third one. So by the second one, if the person's still there, they should have already told them to leave by then. I agree with you.
But
They should.
if it's an isolated situation where somebody's getting arrested and then you have to go back and if that's what you're referring to as a problem that way, keep going back. At that point, the agent or the manager at that point should be there to make sure that they vacate the premises.
Mhm.
And that's, again, that's for the absentee people that own a property. They, in my opinion, will be getting to that. There's somebody that has to be a manager. Okay, number 8, correct? I believe that's where we're on now.
Yes.
What are the options, if any, for property owners that are currently running the STR in the residential zone, which is prohibited? Would they be grandfathered? What if a property owner purchased a lot with an intention of renting it as an STR, but has not gotten it up and running as of the passing of this ordinance on March 28th?
So the way this hangs together with zoning versus these regulations, the person who already had one in the residential zone, as of, I'm gonna say, I can't give legal advice from a planner, but I read the Conway decision that came out today. And I think that's gonna lead us to treat the grandfathered ones, the ones that were already there doing it because we had a gray area. I think we're gonna need to treat them as grandfathered under the zoning. And those zoning changes take effect, when you post the hearing on the zoning changes. So it's a question for your town attorney, but if they hadn't already done it, you don't have to let them under the zoning. But they would still need one of these permits because this is a business permit.
We did address this. We asked the town attorney about this specifically. Because I've already received a complaint. And his response was that the Alton prohibits anything that's not explicitly listed in our table of uses. So if it's not listed there, it's not permitted. Short-term regulations were not part of the ordinance prior to this.
Yeah, the Conway decision came out today, just to be clear.
Right. And so but Conway did not address short-term rentals. It's still, I haven't read the decision, but what the response from our attorney was that so that the town's.
That it's a permissive ordinance, that it only allows what it's listed.
Yep.
What I'm saying is, the court in the Conway decision went the other way when it wasn't specific in the zoning ordinance.
Right, because
Our zoning ordinance is specific now,
yes.
but I think you're gonna have trouble enforcing anything that was already there based on today's decision from the court.
Well,
Again,
our answer.
Big difference.
Our answer
Yeah.
was that the short-term rental not part of the table of uses and that most every commercial use or retail business or service is prohibited in the residential zone, which is true. So it's our very restricted zone. So in the absence of a defined category, it should be considered some other use. So he does not believe that short-term rentals are vested or grandfathered. I hate grandfathered. Vested in our residential zone. Now, obviously, that's going to get challenged. But our position is they're not allowed in the residential zone,
Right.
whether they were there before or not. So,
Now, that being said, Does that mean 3/4 of those houses on the lake aren't in a resident, aren't in a?
They're not. They're a Lakeshore residential zone or RC zone.
That would-
We're very,
Right out.
we have a very small residential zone here in town.
Yeah.
It's just a small one here in town.
We were trying, River Lake and Barn, this area
Gotcha.
and that out there.
Mhm.
Most of the rest of it is RC or, commercial, or then we get out of the other zones where
Yeah.
we do allow these. So it's not like we don't allow them at all in town. And we do address it specifically. And the decision today, as I understand it, was because they weren't addressed specifically and they were just saying, well, it's not allowed. It's not in the table of use, it's not allowed. So that is how the court ruled against Conway.
Right.
We have made this specific. Again, I have no doubt this will be challenged.
Mhm.
Um,
Well,
but
that's my advice to all my client towns is not to take enforcement action against the pre-existing ones if your ordinance was gray. Because we didn't know until today how the courts were gonna define residential, whether they were gonna define residential to include short-term rental, and they did. So that's my recommendation, is to not tell them they're in violation for having the short-term rental in the residential zone, but require them to have this permit.
we'll go back to our attorney with this
Yeah,
also.
I was gonna.
Obviously, this is just today.
Most
the
definitely.
information Came out, the decision.
Conway gained some more waterfront today.
They did. They did. Well,
Yeah.
the public did.
That sucks.
So. But that's where we stand at the moment.
So we
So
can
it's
clarify
not
that
allowed.
question
With legal.
We will,
legal
yeah, we'll
counsel.
get the opinion from the town attorney.
As of right now, though, John, what you're saying is it's not allowed in that zone. So
Correct.
they're
That's
not
correct.
grandfathered. There
That's
is no
right.
gray.
And that, yeah.
Yep, okay.
So it'll go to legal counsel.
Yep.
And
Gotcha.
why we address that, and the purpose was to, keep a residential zone, keep a neighborhood type thing.
Mm.
Not transit traffic in and out
Right.
on a constant basis. And it's not like we're taking over, not like the residential zone is 3/4 of the town.
Right.
So we want a comfortable place for people to live.
Yeah, that's not the issue. The issue is, to me, is whether you have a likelihood of winning. And that, as a planner, my advice on that tends to be different than the lawyer who is gonna get paid whether you win or lose.
Well, but that's not, I'm not, in the business of generally telling people no or not offering options, but this, and then, like I said, ultimately we'll defer to what the town attorney says and we'll see what challenges may arise.
Yeah,
Right now, it's
absolutely.
not. We'll deal with the town attorney, and if he tells us different, then we'll
By
have to change it.
the time we get back to
This point,
finalizing
I
all of
agree.
it.
At this point, we
It is a
need
no.
to go to legal counsel and get his
Yeah.
blessing on it.
We haven't had time for him to
Right.
look at it and digest it. So.
Just on the second end of that question. And this is my personal opinion on that particular one, the one about individuals who bought land with the intent, but have not constructed anything. My feeling is we don't I should say, we don't vest any other use unless it's up and functioning and working when an ordinance changes.
Right.
So if you bought a piece of raw land, because there's no way to prove.
You're gonna rent it out.
There's no way that you could prove one way or the other
Right.
that was your original intent, that I think if it's not up and running, then it's not even considered, but that's.
I
Well,
agree.
it does.
No, I
mean,
agree.
It kind of.
I agree.
Because try to find a place to rent for like a family or something right now. You couldn't do it. Because everybody wants to short-term rent their
Yeah.
stuff around, and it just, you couldn't, and even if you want, just let's say you're a young kid starting out, you couldn't afford to leave your parents' house right now. There's no way.
That's that is the way it is.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's the world we live in, but.
You also have to consider, I think if you use the grandfather argument, very difficult to prove that somebody hadn't
I've
already
had a
done.
grandfather,
you know,
yeah. Opens a lot of
Even if it was
doors.
22 years ago,
Mhm.
for half an hour.
That's true. That's true.
Right.
Yep. Okay. Number 9.
Yes.
This is one I'd like you to ask your town attorney, because I've had different opinions on it from
On the-
different town attorneys. So you need to go with yours on this.
I think so. I think we should.
I agree.
Yeah, it's a good idea, but check with your town attorney to make sure you can.
We rent a place up north snowmobile, up in Rangeley every year, and you gotta go through an actual agent with somebody.
Yeah,
you call,
that's
Right.
And they give you, it's not like a free for all where you just show up and jump in there. You have to get everything.
It's,
just so it's on record.
it coincides with the town's alarm policy too, that if you put an alarm system in your house and you're an out-of-state resident or somebody even out of
Somebody's gotta
the
be able to
area,
maintain it.
you have to have a key holder that can respond.
Yep.
You know,
I'm gonna read this in so everybody knows what it is. Will a property owner be required to produce an agent property manager? One who could respond in person within 30 minutes to be out on the site if issues arise that require one. In the event that the owners live out of state.
Out of the area.
What about requiring a knockbox?
Doesn't matter whether the owners are out of state or not, right?
Right, somebody's.
It
still
could be
gotta
up on Mount Washington,
Some-
uptown.
Right,
You just have to have someone who's responsible to do that.
that's right. And that's where an agent comes in.
Well, the Knox box would be to access an empty building.
Yeah,
Right,
that's all.
right. That's all that's for.
That's just to get in and out. That's.
Yeah,
not
I
to
don't know
Manage
that-
anything.
that's not a good risk management for the
No.
town.
No.
Oh, it's
No.
not.
I don't know
Entering
that
somebody
that would
else's
be
property.
An effective.
Right.
You know, may want to we can get input from fire on that, but I don't know.
So you're gonna scratch the Knox box part?
I don't see them.
I
don't
don't,
see that-
you know, it's the my understanding is the primary purpose so that fire has access to some place where there is nobody there.
Right.
Or no one to let them in.
Right.
In this case, we're dealing with live bodies in a building that are there.
Yeah.
We wouldn't normally need a Knox box to get in.
Right.
It's not like a
Right.
business that would be closed.
And if
There's
this place
gonna be
is on
people
fire,
there.
the fire department has the master key, so it doesn't
Yeah.
really.
So the general consensus then is yes for a manager, property agent or a manager, and no for a Knox box.
Did you want us to check with town council as to whether we can enforce having a property manager
Probably.
on
Yeah, I
site?
mean, that's
before
what-
you-
Definitely.
I don't know if you can
See,
actually
it-
tell somebody they have to, but
Just to
I
be
think I
sure.
think it's important to do that. Yes.
Yeah. Okay,
you would think if somebody's not living here, that they can check on their property, they would want somebody to do that anyway.
Well, we
I think-
do require it under the alarm policy, or we won't allow.
Legal
a
counsel should go
responsible-
through this whole sheet.
Yeah.
Should go through this whole sheet. And if there's
Yeah,
anything
I
that
did send this to him, so maybe we can
sparks
do a
up an
follow up.
interest that we should not be doing.
Yeah.
You should be going right through the whole thing.
Yeah.
And saying, no, I don't think you guys can be doing this, or yes, this is a good idea.
Yeah.
Or a suggestion.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say before you post it for a public hearing, when you're
absolutely.
happy with what you have, then send the draft to the town council.
Send them the proposed form at the end.
Mhm.
Just because going through the questions and replying back, there's a lot of
Mhm.
back and forth with that.
What do you mean?
Just thinking from the cost aspect of
Okay,
things,
okay.
that we put what the board consensus is. and-
Right,
and-
from
and
tonight.
everything
From tonight.
here
Yeah.
Into one form.
Yep.
Yes.
Because if we struck it out, then there's no reason for him to spend. time
Right, no,
researching it.
Right.
give them what we have tonight. Yes.
I agree.
Yes. Okay, number 10. If required, in addition to providing contact information for an agent property manager, should property owners post occupancy limits and quiet hours to ensure occupancy limits are not exceeded and to ensure adhesion to the town's noise ordinance.
I think it
I
should be
think
listed in the
yes.
ad.
That's
Right.
that's part of
Part of
the,
the
it should be part of the contract or whatever.
Yes.
These are
These
parts
are
for the
town
property.
This is, yeah. This
To
is
be
our rule.
posted in the building also, but it should be part of their, so people know when they
Yes,
sign on. There we go.
yes, there she is.
There he is.
Josh.
And a list of the ordinance. Ordinances. Yep. Yes.
I'm okay with it.
Mm-hmm. Good. Everybody else okay with that? Okay, number 11. What is the time frame for the code enforcement official and fire department to perform their inspections? How often are inspections required? What would be the time frame to be the town to issue a permit after inspections have been performed and satisfactory results have been obtained?
We already discussed
I
the.
think
We
Yeah.
do.
inspection.
So someone comes in,
Yep.
they give you an application.
So
How long, how long is that time frame before inspections
That's
take place?
initially, that's gonna be very hard to call.
Mhm.
Right,
Well, John, when you go out for a building permit,
Yeah.
what's the time frame that you have?
Sure.
Someone, what,
don't care.
that someone brings me a building permit, I
We
have
got
up to
3 left.
30 days by,
4
by law
Yeah,
to
I thought that was all.
give a response.
Yep.
It doesn't mean I have to issue it. I just have to have given a response in it.
so shouldn't we be pretty close to that? I would think.
It may be, it's gonna depend on volume.
Yep.
You know, that.
Yeah, that's true.
right.
Okay, like we talk about volume, for years, I was able to probably issue your house permit in a week.
Mhm.
The last 2 years, I've gone to 2 to 3 weeks in some cases.
Mhm.
Of being able to issue a permit if the application is complete.
There are quite a few people that have to go, so more along the lines of a 90-day or something like that.
I don't, like I said, I hate like hell.
Getting more applications or just because it's getting more to do to.
Well,
It's gonna be more to do.
More, it's been busier and busier and
when you
the,
start this, you're gonna get he's gonna have to go.
there's gonna be a
Yeah.
flood.
He's gonna be
So-
in it.
Right.
This is gonna be
It's gonna be in.
time consuming.
Yeah.
And plus, it's not just you, it's also
Fire
a
department.
Fire department,
representative.
police
So
department.
it's
That's why-
kind of an idea
Yeah,
of,
so that first, it's gonna take a while.
Yeah.
But I'm not, I
Yeah.
don't, it's hard for me to say it's gonna take this much
You don't
because
know.
I don't know. I don't know how many are gonna come in.
You
I
could
don't
be
know.
3 days out on
Right.
the islands
Yeah,
checking
Right.
stuff and you're not doing stuff back here, so.
Right.
Yeah.
So basically, they're asking how long, when they come in and fill out the application, how long it would be before you would actually respond
yeah.
to get out there.
Legally, do we have to put a limit on that?
No.
Do we have to put a limit on it? We can get there when we get
I
there.
think so.
But what we can
Taylor,
do,
what-
just a suggestion, if
It
you,
would be the same as a building permit.
No,
Yeah. At least give a response.
well, that's what I was gonna say,
Gotta
is
give a
that it's
response in
not,
30.
not worded so that, a permit will be issued within 30 days.
Yeah, a
but
response.
Then a response will be issued, because then that way, if we get an onslaught and we need some grace period here
Mhm.
from, manpower issues and things like that, that you have that latitude to send a letter out saying we acknowledge the receipt of your permit. Due to the current backlog, it will be approximately
Yeah.
2 weeks before, 2 weeks.
Plus, you have to
before it
remember,
goes
you
out.
have to, you're the ones that are gonna have to sign off on these things.
That's right.
So the time for us to do our process and then get it to you and you meet at certain timeframes. So that's gonna be a discussion among you, how you want to handle that.
I honestly, I like the sound of your 30-day, you get a response within 30 days.
Your
And then
response,
there
yeah.
is no time frame of when it gets done. I
Yeah.
mean, there's too many people, there's too many moving parts, too many people involved.
Doesn't have, just to interject, it doesn't have to go to the select board to be signed. The select board can designate the code enforcement officer, just like with building permits.
Yeah, but he has too much as it is.
He's got a lot on his plate.
We
But
should,
it's
we should
just
know.
an
by the-
added, but whoever's going out and doing the inspection, there's no reason you can't have them be the ones that sign it. Rather than adding an additional step where it comes back to the select board.
You can sign off on it after you do the inspection right there at that point, right?
Right.
Possibly, yeah.
This was an attempt
Not gonna
to,
commit 100% to that because
Right.
again,
it was an attempt to alleviate the pressure on the building inspector. But and the fire department.
Well, it's anybody, I just put it to be the signature of the select board designee so that you can designate whoever makes sense.
okay, could you say that again, please, Tara?
I would have the signature be for the select board designee and then it's flexible.
So one of us would have to go out there and inspect each one
Well, no.
No,
or
no.
look at the
no,
paperwork.
No,
The ultimate signature
Yeah.
is to be your designee or yourselves.
We could designate Ryan to be the signer of the.
exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So if there's 10 of them coming at once that you sign, because I'm sure you're gonna get a lot of them that you can do all at once. And then you'd wait and get them all together and send them in at once. So you're not sending one every day.
Yeah. Or however we process.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not-
Yeah, but there's no need for it to take up time on a select board agenda.
And if
Right.
if the board wants to, if you do choose to go in that direction and you want
Mhm.
me to be the designee to sign after John comes back from an inspection and we catch up. What I can do is photocopy anyone that we sign or approve and put it in the board's
Yes.
file. So that
You guys
are-
know about.
You're up to speed. on
So
it.
we know exactly.
You should be seeing how many are, how many are coming, where they're at, so that you have a good idea of what, where these things are going
I
on.
think one of us should work with Ryan on that.
That sounded like you volunteered.
Sounds
Yeah.
like, it
Yeah.
sounds like you just volunteered.
I think I just did.
Yeah.
And that's not a
That's
bad-
fine.
it-
That's fine. I mean, any one of us, but that's fine. Yeah.
Cause that,
One of us should be directly involved with this.
That's fine.
Do I understand as part of the
Decide on
phrase-
that.
the phrasing here that in addition to the building inspector's visit, it has to be a separate visit by the fire
No.
department?
No, yeah.
Yes.
Oh, the fire.
well, and I think that's something that we can firm up between us,
Mhm.
cause short version is, that, we're gonna be looking at very similar things. We're gonna be looking at life safety. We're gonna be.
Life
looking
safety.
at,
Yep.
So that it could be,
There's no sense in tying up two departments for.
No.
yeah.
If we don't need it.
Or whoever is,
Well-
do the inspection themselves, right?
Yeah.
Looking at life safety, egress.
Parking, septic, and
Septic.
some of it's gonna be just
Smoke
a
detectors.
review of the application. They say we have this, or a review of
Right.
the file to ensure that the septic is up to date or whatever.
Mhm.
So,
Right, there
Right.
could be like a checklist created in.
Correct.
So then everyone's looking at whoever it
Same
be
thing.
out there doing the
Everybody
inspection.
sits down and makes a checklist.
Can make the same-
Fire department, and then
That's
whoever's
it.
doing it goes through the checklist and
right,
Right.
right.
That's it.
one
That's
person
it.
instead of 10.
And
Yep.
it makes it a lot easier that way if it's just one person.
And you always
Doing the
reserve
inspections.
the right
You
to
have
say, well, this is an
The
unusual
manpower issues with
situation.
the fire
I
department.
need to call
Yeah.
them.
Correct.
Consider.
What's that?
And we do have to consider we're in the process of trying to go full time with the fire department. We have vacant spots the time.
Yeah.
Is tough for the fire department right now. And
Yeah.
Mhm.
if doing it this way with a checklist with the contingency that obviously if John sees something that's questionable in his eyes.
He can say-
The inspection has to go to the fire department for it. Yeah.
And that's why I agree there should be no date of completion. You will get a permit by X amount of
Right.
days answer. It's just a response in 30 days and then you have plenty of time to do your thing and
Right, I think
apartments.
especially, the first, I'd say at least good couple years.
It's gonna be a
and
learning
Until,
curve.
Until this gets,
it starts to become just
Absolutely.
your normal process of
becomes
the
to be
town.
routine.
Sure you don't want to stay?
That's right. I'd be willing to help out, but that's it.
Okay, number 12.
You convince my wife, Andy, you convince my wife.
An interesting question.
Yeah, I feel like we just talked about that. Yeah, and then we did just talk about this.
Yeah.
Will the town be able to process all permit applications in a timely manner so as to not affect the many STRs in town that are already booked out throughout the season? And we pretty much discussed that, but I wanted to read that for the record. Number 13, should property owners provide a boundary survey or something of that like to prospective renters to ensure that they are aware of the property lines so they do not encroach on a butter's land?
I think it's important that the renters be made aware of their
Yes,
limits. Absolutely,
Yes.
especially when we're working with, very small properties.
Mhm.
But a boundary survey is pretty expensive and could be excessive.
Yeah, I'm not saying they have to, I would not say they have to go get a survey, but
no,
they would have to make sure the property, they say, okay, here from the tree here to this,
even have something in writing and something, just a little
Honestly, I would-
drawing.
I
Little
would think-
drawing is showing them
A
spots.
lot of, I would think when you go to a hotel, when you walk into a hotel, you have a list of, these are the extensions for the
Yes.
phone line to
Yep.
contact
Right.
this is this. So there should be a piece of paper, even if
Yes.
it's something out there that says, okay, well, your house is here, a garage is here, your
Right.
property lines are
Normally. in
something
a
like that.
This is your space.
Airbnb, you walk in right on the.
Everything's right there. There's a big
Everything's
booklet.
laid right out.
Showing, this is
And
the
that's-
this is the
exactly.
driveway. This
Exactly.
is your driveway. There's only enough.
Number of-
enough parking.
maximum occupancy, including children's pets, so on and so forth.
There's ways to provide that, that information without having to go do a survey.
So you're not parking on the neighbor's lawn, you're not parking in the neighbor's
Design,
driveway.
the plot plan is gonna.
Quite frequently, there's a septic design.
Anything like
or
that.
Something that's, but so that just, it has to be, doesn't have to be down to the inch, but just so that they understand that, hey, this dock is here.
Right.
And it's
Right.
not yours.
That's right.
That boathouse is right there. That's not your property to
not
go
your-
on
that's right.
to. It's here's your access.
Right.
That's a definite.
So I would just like to say, thank you for coming to that determination on behalf of every resident that has been to all of our committee meetings, our planning board meetings, that have come in and expressed the numerous issues that they've had with short-term rentals and people just not being aware of, where they're at or just not caring.
Right.
That they're
And
on someone
that
else's
has
property.
That's what we're trying to change.
So I do really truly appreciate that you guys have taken that seriously.
Well,
Thank
I
you.
think this is going to be taken very seriously.
Oh,
This
it
is a
has to
town-
be. It
Right.
has to
Yeah.
be. Has to be taken seriously.
So we will require that the property owner provide something?
Yes,
Absolutely.
yes, absolutely.
At least for the renter, the renter, when they come into the building, they know that you don't go over there and you don't go over there.
That way it's all cut and dry. So when they do commit an
Exactly.
infraction, it's plain, okay, you were given a piece of paper that said you can't be here. You were here. It's done.
You have, just like if you would, your areas of egress, your exits, your driveway,
Right.
where, if you have, where your smoke detectors are, your boundary lines are, your dock is at, your boat is at, wherever the case may be. So they know what is allowable use for them.
And where you
what is-
cannot be.
Spelled out. for
Everything's
you.
spelled out, so
Exactly.
there's no mistake.
That way they can't turn around and say, well, I didn't know. No,
Exactly. There is no, I didn't know.
Right.
It's not a good answer.
It's all there. Black and white, right along with their ordinances and their household rules and how they manage the home.
So are we saying that we will require that document? with all
Yes.
that
Yes.
information?
Yes.
We are.
They will, so just to add to that, when they do apply for the permitting process, it should be in there that they have to supply us with a copy of that.
Right.
I'd like to see what that is,
Mhm.
what they're giving the
What they're
giving the
giving their
clients,
renters?
the renters. I'd like to see that,
We can do
right?
that. Just a copy of it?
Yeah, you'd like to have it in the file with the property, so you know, okay, well, this is what they gave the renter when they showed up.
Yeah,
There's no.
it's either
reason-
that or it's when the building inspector inspects. Well, that would be after the fact. So, yeah,
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Because then, you get there and if they
When you
didn't
come in, you
supply
get your
it,
Permit, you hand over.
this is what I'm giving my
this
renters.
is what they got.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So as part of the package that we provide to an applicant, we would maybe want to include a list of those things. that we're
Exactly.
Yes.
A list of required
Yes.
things they need to
Documents, yeah.
provide us with.
Yep, what they should be supplying every renter.
That could be part of
Use
that checklist that you
Yeah,
were talking
that's right.
about.
Yep.
Yeah, we want to see your checklist for the renter's checklist when we go in to do the inspection. Where's your book that shows the renter what they can and can't do?
Exactly. I'm good with that. 14, the permits should indicate that the granting of a permit is owner specific and that they are not transferable.
100%.
Yeah, that was just more of a
Not
statement and a
transferable.
question.
They are
It's
not
good to have
transferable.
that added on that.
Is that, Tara, is that
That's
fine.
something common you've seen? That the.
I don't know if I've seen it on the forms, but it's definitely the intent. So I think it's a good idea to put it on.
Absolutely,
On that.
Yep.
absolutely,
Just to make things clear.
most definitely. Everybody okay with that?
Yeah.
Okay,
And that's where the 4111C can take a different path than the zoning, because a zoning permit is always runs with the land.
Right.
and again, we talked about this, number 5. After finalizing the permit, what is the time frame of property owners coming into compliance?
I didn't quite understand that question, because you won't give them the permit unless they're in compliance.
Yes.
Unless they're in compliance. Yeah.
I think what just my interpretation of this question is, once we finalize a permit process, how long are we gonna give residents to come into compliance with the new?
Oh,
That's,
With the new
that's,
permit.
So that's exactly what
I
that's,
get it.
say.
That's what she means.
you know, just because it's,
got
you know, it's kind of something new, like we did with the excavation regulations, you know, we gave people,
Just gotta move
you know,
the comma.
6 months to come in, you know, the 6 months went by. You know, people hadn't come in, we kind of gave them like, you know, another 6 months, you know, just to, you got to give people some sort of
Some sort of,
time frame.
oh,
'cause
time
sometimes
frame.
Right.
Never come in, or
Right.
they'll just come in
Right.
whenever.
Yeah.
And it, you know, obviously it could be extended depending upon, you know, how you guys feel or however the situation might be. It's gonna be,
I
I
think,
feel like it's gonna be, you
It's
know,
gonna be
a tough go.
case-by-case thing, and
Yeah.
The very beginning to get everybody
It's gonna take time.
on, you know,
This is gonna be a
it's a
case-by-case
process.
deal anyway, so it's not,
that
Yeah.
question.
it's.
Yeah, it's gonna take time to get things rolling to begin
Absolutely.
with. We know
So
that.
the two towns where I work most closely with this, most people were willing to apply pretty quick. And they still have a couple that are kind of hanging out there and getting more letters. Nobody's taken anybody to court. But in general, compliance has been pretty good. By giving a lot of time and working with people.
Okay.
Just a thought, if you wanted to look at a 6 month.
I was just thinking
Timeframes.
6 months.
I was gonna say, I have 6
Then they
months
have to
written down.
reapply after
Got
the 6 months.
STRs that have already rented out
Mhm.
into the summer months right now. If you allow the 6 months
It's a
Well,
grace
with-
period.
with the caveat of if if a complaint comes in or the police department is called
Mhm.
and there's issues that we can require a homeowner or a homeowner to come into compliance immediately.
Immediately,
Yeah.
to carry on. with
I wrote down 6 months. I felt as though that 6 months made sense.
I think 6 months makes sense and there should be no grant for extension. If you don't comply within the 6 months, you have to reapply, period.
Yeah.
No exemptions, no exceptions.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Does everybody have a copy of the application for short-term rental? Are there any questions on that?
There was one thing I wanted to bring to everybody's attention to look at, because I think we need to. All right, never mind. It's in there under number 9. I was concerned about the fire pit language.
Oh, yeah.
But it does state in there that a renter is required to get a fire permit from the fire department. Just because you never know what the fire conditions are gonna be rated at when a renter shows up, and they shouldn't automatically assume that they can have a campfire
Right.
if all of a sudden we're in a drought and everything's dry as a bone.
Again, that should
Oh.
probably be listed in that packet
Yes,
that they
it
hand
would
the
have to
person.
be.
Yeah.
Now, what?
It would have to be.
What I have here says it's in work that the owners should be responsible for obtaining the permit, but providing the information to the renters.
Mhm.
And shall be posted, so that the permit would be out to the property owner.
Right, for the camp, but with the only difference would be that the only annual campfire, they have to have an inspection by the fire department on a permanent fire pit. It can't be one of those round tabletop things on your
Right.
patio.
Right.
Which for those who don't have a fixed fire pit or whatnot, then I would just caution that we make sure that they have language that you're required.
Well,
That should be
There's no
included.
seasonal-
It should be included.
The problem I see with that is with renters, better stock up on fire permits. Cause they're gonna be writing them left and right. If you get, like Nick said, you just
Mhm.
let the homeowner get the fire permit and then explain to the people if there's.
They provided, they need to, they have a provided space for it, make sure.
That, the rental person should provide them with whatever the fire danger rate is.
Well, they should-
Then You know.
Yeah, but well, you're also talking, I mean, you were talking about them, you know, the people owning the homes being, they could be in Florida, they could be anywhere.
Right.
So it should be kind of, I guess you would put kind of that on the rent, more the renter.
Manager,
Oh,
the manager
Oh,
would be,
apologize.
the manager or the agent. would
I
be taking
understand.
care
That
of
makes sense.
The agent can say, you know, we're in a bad season. We really don't want you to have a fire.
Sorry about that.
Yeah.
That makes
Each
sense.
week when there's a new renter coming in, it should be noted whether or not there's a fire danger that week or not.
That way somebody's not running to the firehouse every time they rent it out for a.
Oh, no, I agree.
And that
I
way
agree
they're-
wholeheartedly on, because it encourages whoever the manager or the property owner is to create a fixed and safe fire pit.
And it
Yes.
keeps them saying,
Yeah.
Well, that's what I was just gonna say also. There are, and that's what they should have is a fixed and safe, already inspected fire pit.
Right.
And then that can be supplied.
I do believe one of the major infractions, I mean, I know we're talking about, you know, the 3-strike rule. However, if there is a fire on the property that was not permitted,
Mhm.
that should be a serious
That is-
infraction.
that
That's
is.
a big one.
yeah.
Mhm.
No, and that would be.
And when we do discuss the language of violations, escalating fines,
Mhm.
we can, meaning the three of us can discuss maybe a little bit more on some language, even with town council on
Mhm.
just what you're talking about, given that the town has the flexibility, given the severity of a violation or incident, crime committed, that that we have the flexibility to enforce the maximum amount of punishment or
If the renter
or
commits a
take the full
felony,
permit,
Right.
you know, based on the severity, just so when locked into you know, $300 fine
Right.
for an unpermitted fire.
Yeah.
Right.
Something along those lines.
On your point, but under agent information, rather than mailing address, need their physical location so we can make sure they're within
oh, that's a good
reasonable
point.
travel.
I'm sorry, can you say that again, please?
Oh, I'm sorry, maybe I'm not yelling into this thing loud enough. The under agent information, we have their mailing address.
Mhm.
But I think we need their physical
Physical
address.
Physical address.
Of the
Address.
agent.
We'll know
Yeah.
Yeah,
good
physical
point.
address. Yes,
that they're not.
absolutely. Any other questions?
Good
We're gonna,
Hold on.
board's gonna discuss on when we're gonna have the public.
We'll open up.
at
We'll
once
open up
instead
shortly.
of-
I do not hear.
Is it not ready yet?
Well, this is just a draft.
This is just a rough draft.
These are just notes.
This
and
was just the
questions.
notes for us there to look at, to check through.
So I have a question.
Mhm.
So is it safe to assume that some of these answers from these questions will get added to this permit?
Yeah.
Yes,
So-
yes, I
That's
think
what I
so.
was assuming.
Absolutely.
Just confirming that.
Yeah, no,
Just-
definitely. Yes. Yeah, I mean, if you, is there anything, Jessica or John, that you want to add?
Not this time.
No, not at this time. It's a good start.
Any other,
Anything we can do to make it easier on you, John.
yeah, we'll go that.
Next place.
If there's no other questions. All right, at this time, I can, open it up to public, input. If anybody would like to come up, state your name and make a comment. Come on.
Here, yes. You
Come on
can
up.
sit right over there if you
Right
like.
over here.
Ryan doesn't bite anymore.
New resident. I haven't even been here for 3 years. I live at 58 Spring Street,
You just,
Boston Bay,
Your name?
just state your name, please.
Donna Hall.
Thank you.
And I live at 58 Spring Street, Alton Bay. We're going into just starting our 3rd year living there. We live right beside the Venezia cabins that were just done over. Did them over beautifully. They're lovely. They're wonderful. I have no problem with the man that owns them. He's a nice guy. But my driveway in some kind of wording from 1922 says that they can use my driveway. They don't need my driveway. They have 14 parking spots right on the bay in the front. My driveway, they've already toted in truckfuls of rocks, mulch, dirt to do it over. They've missed my brand new car by an inch. They've broken my wallway where my garden is. And he said that he would repair it, but nothing's happened yet. I'm concerned about all the cabins that are there. I'm concerned about the number of people that will be there. It's supposedly be able to hold 100 guests. One of the cabins, when I look out my kitchen window while I'm preparing my dinner, is right there, like as close as the roof that you can see almost. I'm concerned about fire. I'm concerned about that cabin is supposedly supposed to be able to access my driveway to go in and out. Now, this is an all-night event. Last year, this cabin was, the grounds were being sold, so there wasn't a lot of activity. But when there was activity, it was loud. They were pulling in and out of my driveway, risking a camper, a Lincoln, a brand new car, a brand new motorcycle. Those are all, they mean something to me. It's all I have. I'm 67 years old. And we came here to retire in peace and quiet. And I'm concerned. I'm concerned where I stand with my driveway. I don't want to share my driveway when he has plenty of parking. It's for one house or one cabin, evidently. But he's been pulling big, gigantic construction vehicles backing in for days. It's like my nerves are rattled from this. Beep, 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 dumping rocks. And I appreciate what he's done because he's picked it up and it looks nice. But where do we stand as residents? You know, do I have to share my driveway? Can I change a 1922 law, the wording? I'm gonna see if I can have my property line measured. You know, and I don't mind the people there. I mean, they're there. I can't do anything about that. They're gonna come in vacation. Like you said, they could have $1 million boats. They can have whatever they want. I can't stop anything from that. I don't have $1 million things either. We spent all our money, sold our house, bought our stuff, lived our dream. We're gonna like retire. We're gonna move to New Hampshire. We've been taking our kids up here since they could walk. And we're gonna do that. We're gonna buy a Harley Davidson, damn it. It's all like a dream. Does anybody have a dream? That was our dream. We came in, we weren't here a couple of weeks when we were approached by, I only know her first name, Joyce. She owned the place before this man bought it. Told us right away, I have access to your driveway. You can't stop me. You can't. All right. I'm not, I'm not here to fight with you or anything. Don't approach me and say, welcome to the neighborhood. Nobody brought me cookies or cake or said, welcome to Alton Bay. It's like, so where do I stand as a resident who pays taxes when these people that are renting, they're not my neighbors. They're coming just for vacation. They don't give a shit. What are they going to do with their trash? What are they going to do about fire? What are they going to do about things? We live in the woods. Back in Spring Street, downtown Spring Street.
But I think we're on a different meeting.
Yeah.
Maybe we are, but I'm just concerned about that.
Yeah.
Because it's like the rental thing, because they're all rental campings.
Yes.
Where do they park? Where do they go?
This is specific to the short-term rentals.
Yeah.
That is what we're discussing this evening. And
And are they considered
That's a whole different animal from what we're dealing with here.
Yep.
The right of way, if it's the only way to contest a right of way is to do it through an attorney. That right of way was laid out, so they had access to that whenever, and that's they have as much right to use it as you do.
And that's for whoever comes and buys that, and
It's in,
like, where do I stand as a homeowner?
you,
Where do they stand?
That should have been.
again, this is a workshop this evening. This isn't a regular selectman meeting. It's a workshop but thank you. We thank you for your time and okay,
I'm concerned about it. Nervous all the time.
we definitely understand.
Appreciate all these big. Coming in my eyes.
So this is, just to clarify, this is specific to the new regulations and establishing those. Your specific case scenario, case stuff like that, a better venue is to bring any specific complaints you have to the code enforcement officer. But, but
they're
that's
not
something
breaking
that has to be.
Okay.
so.
They haven't. It's like just my driveway. Smashing into my garden and it makes a difference.
Thank you very much for your input. Thank you very much. Nice to meet you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Good evening, gentlemen and ladies. I'm Vince Bober. I think some of you have certainly heard from me prior to this meeting.
Good evening.
I'd like to kind of go down this list that we had, that everybody went over very quick.
Okay.
Just for the record,
So where you?
where you reside, just for the record.
Oh, I reside my residence is Rochester, New Hampshire. 6 months of the year I spend at 119 Mount Major Highway.
What I didn't say earlier is we are going to limit comments up for 5 minutes.
Right.
So, okay.
Okay. I agree with everything in number one. And I think these things do need to be part of the advertisement of the Airbnbs, the requirements of town roads and things like that. People read advertisements and they sound pretty good. They come in and they're terribly disappointed in what they have found out. I mean, I'm talking about firsthand experience on this. I've got letters if anybody's really interested. A septic system. Was it decided that you had to have a septic inspection prior to the permit being issued?
Yes.
I think that is important. Because of the
Yeah,
conditions.
if there's no, if there is no approved system in the ground, then the system that's there has to be evaluated.
So it has to be, the licensed inspector has to say, yes, this meets the
Certified,
requirements.
certified.
So many bedrooms, okay. The thing about whether they're lake water, I think that needs to be disclosed in advance in the advertising, so people know what they're getting into. If they're
The
gonna-
people would be notified by the homeowner.
Yeah. The permit being valid for a couple of years, I don't see any problem with that. Number 7, the penalties. I'm assuming that if the police get called because somebody's noisy, or if they're out of control, and if police decide they should fine these people or do something about it, I think that should still be that should be a strike against the owner of the property. The 3 strikes you're talking about. So. Number 9, I think I would just strike in the event of the owners live out of state.
Well, this is nothing that's, this is not firm language here. This is
Right,
just
yeah,
discussion
Yeah,
language.
I'm
So,
just giving my input.
Right, okay.
yeah.
Couple more minutes.
The other contact information and all that, we talked about a list. We ought to have a list of the ordinance that people are likely not to know about, like our noise ordinances and things of that nature. I think should be posted right in.
And that's what we've discussed.
That's what we discussed. That is what we discussed.
Okay, I had a little trouble hearing sitting back there
Okay.
sometimes. Don't have any problem with that. The next thing, item number 13, posting this boundary and things of that nature. There's got to be a better way about it. I don't know what it is. I have read my neighbors' postings on it. People don't read that stuff. They just plain don't read it. They come in and do what they want to do, and nobody reads this stuff. So I don't know how you can do that. I don't know if you have to have signs around the outside of your property saying, hey, this is the boundary. I don't have an answer for that.
Shop collars.
But
Shop collars.
Invisible fence.
Actually, I do have an answer for that.
my experience is no trespassing signs don't work. Ropes across walkways with no trespassing sign, nothing works, And if you call the police because people are trespassing, they don't want to mess with that stuff.
The police?
No, they don't.
Of course they do. They'll be right up there. It's an STR.
No, they don't.
They will.
Well, I'm glad you're saying that. When things get rough, I'd invite any one of you guys to come up and spend some time with me, but I hope it will not be rough this year. We talked about permitting. Town of Kittery addressed this. Yearly license fee for non-owner occupied short-term rental is $750. While keeping annual fees for owner occupied and seasonal dwelling units at $100.
So if the owner's there, it costs you $100. If the owner's not there, they know they're gonna have trouble and it's gonna cost the town money.
Okay.
So I think that's and I've seen that written into other towns, things of that nature.
It's good to know. Thank you for the input. Thank you.
Great.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Sounds like a very steep thing. And the other, one other thing, if you'll bear with me, we talked about fines. The first one is a fine, the second, first strike's a warning, the second one is a fine.
Mhm.
And the third one was a loss of permit.
Mhm.
The fine, unless you find somebody significant money, they're just gonna pay the fine and keep on moving. You know, somebody gets $5,000 a week for a house, you find them $100 for an infraction, they're gonna laugh at you.
Well, if the thing is, it's an escalating thing. So maybe $100 fine now, the next time they may not have a permit and not have that
Well,
income.
then the third time is the permit.
Well, and it's not, again, this is not written in stone.
Yeah.
Right.
Right? This is all still in flux.
It's all in the
I
works.
can't, I don't recommend revoking their permit for the first offense either. So, and then
No, I
Thank you very much
understand
for your input and
that. That's it.
okay.
Thank you for
Thank
listening.
you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep.
Bill O'Brien. I live next to Vince and next to the halls. What Vince is saying is absolutely right. I've called the police 3 times. It's tough. One thing I wanted to ask Paul was, no, you're talking about the grandfathered right. Where do we draw the line on?
we don't know yet.
You don't know yet.
We don't.
We don't know yet. We had a reading, we have an opinion from our town council. And the Supreme Court issued a decision today that may affect that
Okay.
for Conway. So we don't know.
Don't have
Going
any.
back to the town council.
Okay, the other thing was the code enforcement. Like they've mentioned, all of a sudden, we may have an influx of almost 100 people. And abutting their property, I have a pedestrian walkway aside of me, which I've met a lot of my neighbors because of it, which is fine. When they're working on the place next door, they're running up and down that pedestrian right of way with a skid steer, pushing over the posts that I had put there so they wouldn't go there. Is that an offense that I call the police for?
It's
I
a
mean-
trespass issue.
Pardon?
That I would consider that a
Yeah.
trespass issue. which
Definitely.
means-
Well, see, there we go, John. If the guy says to me, it's a pedestrian right of way. Yes, it is.
A pedestrian
On
means
a private
two
property.
feet.
Yeah.
Pedestrian does not mean equipment,
That does not mean it. No.
but I don't know. And it's really not part of what we're.
Yeah.
You know,
He got in an argument with me. Luckily, he was a little guy, so I won. But, this is what we're gonna be dealing with when we have this influx of people that are coming in. You know,
Mhm.
that's all I wanted to say. And as far as the penalties and the fines, as Vince says, you're paying $5,000 for renting this place. To be fined $100, $200 is very little. They've come in, they've cut down trees on my property and stood there and said, hey, I have pictures of, you have pictures of me cutting down your tree? No. I've called at 2 o'clock in the morning when they're out there partying. And it takes the police in Alton in the winter to come up. A lot of time to get there because we do not have a large police force in the winter. 3 times I've already called the police force. Now, those strikes against this guy, and as far as Vince says with the permitting, yeah, I said in the beginning, Paul, 2 years ago, I think Airbnb is fine because that's where you get to know the people, you get to know the neighborhood. But when you have a corporation that comes in and they don't care about the neighbors, and that's the bottom line, that's what we've been fighting for 2 years, as you well know. And I think that, whatever I said 2 years ago has already happened now. Sorry to say.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other public input? All right, so then we'll close the public input.
Next step.
Anything else, any other business or anything else on the short-term rental so that anybody has?
Question, does it matter whether a business purchases the home and applies for the short-term rental or if it's a person that does this?
No, you
No,
can't treat them different.
Can't discriminate ownership.
I was,
Yep.
I did not
Yeah,
know.
no,
Yeah.
can't.
Never really had that question, but. Okay.
Yeah.
Any further discussion?
what will be our next step? You're gonna try and glue all this stuff together and
Mhm.
check with the
Yep,
attorneys.
and check with legal counsel
Get it-
and
yeah,
get
yeah.
back with us.
Do whatever we do and present you with a package for
Mhm.
review for the next time,
Okay,
whatever that is.
All right, well, thank you.
that's good. Thank you. Do we want to plan for,
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tara. Thank you very much.
All right, let me know what else I can do to help. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we want to make plans for another workshop or do we want to just wait until we get presented with?
I think so.
I think that's what we should do.
Yeah, I think we accomplished a
Okay, all
lot. I think.
Yeah.
You guys feel.
Yeah, I think
comfortable
hold off
with
for
it?
now, depending upon when
Sound
we get
good.
answers. Yeah.
Business call?
I don't have any other business. Does anybody have any other business at all?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
guys.
Thank you, everybody.
Oh.
Thank you.